There's a new contender in the 5-inch off-road light arena, and it's not from who you think. Today we're putting the spotlight, no puns intended, on a surprising challenger, the 5-inch LED light from MaxPeedingRods. Known more for turbos and coilovers, they've now entered the off-road lighting game with these lights. But how does it stack up against a proven market favorite like the Auxbeam V Ultra? In this video, we'll break it all down. Beam patterns, current draw, real-world performance, and yes, side-by-side comparison shots. If you're shopping for mid-size off-road pods and want the truth beyond the specs, you're in the right place. Let's light things up and see who really earns a spot on your rig. One of the really unique features of the MaxPeedingRod light is their snap-on covers. They don't come in one piece, they come in two halves. You have the flexibility of changing the cover. Also, the beam pattern on the cover can be changed from spot to flood. This is how the beam pattern looks without any cover. What you're seeing here is their flood pattern, however, I think it's more of a white cornering beam pattern. It currently has two white flood beam pattern cover, and I'm changing them both to yellow flood beam pattern. As you can see, the cover really eliminates the hot spot in the center and converts it to a really wide beam, almost like a fog pattern. To take the covers off, you have to pry on that little tab in the center by the center line, with a tiny screwdriver included in the package. The Auxbeam V Ultra has one amber mode in terms of backlight, and the MaxPeedingRod has both amber and white mode for backlight. And they can even be turned on altogether. Now we're measuring the lux of the light pointing to the garage door from around 21 feet away. We're starting off with Tacoma's stock LED low beam for baseline. Stock Tacoma low beam, 1639 lux. Now we have the MaxPeedingRod 5-inch without any covers. MaxPeedingRod 1456 lux. Now we're looking at the Auxbeam V Ultra 5-inch. Auxbeam 4212 lux. The MaxPeedingRod's main light is measured at around 3.99 amps. The amber backlight is measured at around 0.32 amps, and the white backlight is measured at 0.34 amps. Coincidentally, the Auxbeam V Ultra's main light is also measured at about 3.99 to 4 amps, which is identical to the MaxPeedingRod's number. And the amber backlight of the Auxbeam is also identical to the MaxPeedingRod's, measured at 0.33 amps. So here are the numbers. Both MaxPeedingRods and Auxbeam consumes about 51.2 watts of energy. However, the hotspot of the Auxbeam is measured at 4200 lux, while the hotspot of MaxPeedingRods is measured at 1400 lux. But is that the full story? As you see on the screen right now, the Auxbeam has a stronger hotspot. However, the MaxPeedingRods definitely covers more area on the garage door, and the tree on the right side of the screen is very well illuminated compared to the Auxbeam. Also, I noticed the color temperature of the MaxPeedingRods is closer to true white, where the Auxbeam has a slight hue of green color in it. Here is MaxPeedingRod's light with 3 different lens configurations. The top one is without any lens. The middle one shown is with a single lens on the bottom, the lens being yellow flood pattern. and the bottom one is a single lens on the bottom, and the lens being white flood pattern. The flood or white cornering beam pattern really expand the width of the beam, as seen on the wall here. Although having the covers in flood pattern reduces the distance the light reaches, but at the same time, the drastically increased beam width is also beneficial if that's what you're looking for. Now let's come to the field to see the difference in beam pattern in real world. We'll start with the stock Tacoma's LED low beam for baseline comparison. The lights being turned on is labeled on the top right corner, and the camera setting stays consistent between the shots. And the tree line at the end of the field is about 400 yards away. Here we're looking at MaxPeedingRods. As you see, it has a crazy amount of coverage in terms of field of view, left and right of the vehicle. However, the spot beam in the center is relatively weak compared to Auxbeam, and the reach of the hotspot is somewhere equivalent to the stock low beam. Here is Auxbeam V Ultra. It has a more focused and stronger spotlight compared to MaxPeedingRods. However, the beam width is narrower than the MaxPeedingRods. As seen here on the pole, it's illuminated by the MaxPeedingRods and not by the Auxbeam. Now I'm flicking between two lights so that you have a more straightforward comparison. Here's a different angle from the driver's side. The low beam was able to reach the goal with only half of it illuminated, where the high beam of the stock Tacoma is able to extend that distance, revealing the full height of the soccer goal and illuminating further on the side. Here is a Morimoto SAE fog light. It was able to reach very wide right in front of the vehicle. As shown here, both poles are illuminated very brightly. Here is MaxPeedingRods. While not being able to reach the same distance as the stock LED high beam, I believe the MaxPeedingRods advantage is at the near field to the side of the vehicles. As seen in the footage, you literally have 180 degrees field of view from side to side. This will be really helpful if you live in the rural areas where you need that side illumination at every single intersection at night. I believe MaxPeedingRods has some work to do in terms of strengthening that spot beam while still keeping that extremely wide field of view coverage. Here is Auxbeam V Ultra. Consistent with the lux number measurement, the spot beam in the center is very strong and it has no problem reaching the 400-yard tree line. While the sight shooting of the Auxbeam is not as wide as the MaxPeedingRods, the gap between two lights sight shooting is not as big. The coverage is still very useful and more than enough. Now I'm going to show you the effect the bottom flood cover has on the beam pattern on the field. What you're seeing now is the output without any cover. I'm going to switch between setups really quickly so that it's easier for you to tell the difference. Pay attention to these two areas on the side of the main beam. As I switch to the flood pattern on the bottom of the light, it really helps filling up the dark spots around 20 to 50 yards in front of the vehicle that wasn't able to be illuminated without the covers. If you value near field illumination and super wide coverage, having the flexibility of changing out lens patterns to achieve that is good to have. Alright, this is the stock low beam Tacoma. High beam. MaxPeedingRods. Again. Sight shooting is really good. Awesome. 180 degree coverage. Auxbeam. MaxPeedingRod. Auxbeam. MaxPeedingRod has slight more wide beam than Auxbeam. In terms of the illumination spot, I think Auxbeam has MaxPeedingRod beat. This is Auxbeam. MaxPeedingRod. Alright, headlight off. MaxPeedingRod. Not so much spot, sure, but definitely wide. Auxbeam. Auxbeam has some good spot. See that tree over there? Can't see that on Auxbeam. Feeding rod, I can see it. So what's the verdict? For under $200 a pair, the MaxPeedingRods 5-inch light is actually a solid option if you're not chasing long-distance spot beams and just want to strengthen and widen your low beam coverage. This might be the perfect fit. I've noticed it doesn't produce harsh reflections off of road signs, something that often happens with strong spot beams. So that's a big plus for everyday driving and trail use. The ability to change beam patterns and colors adds a lot of flexibility and practicality. MaxPeedingRods also offers an RGB version of this light, which lets you dial in the color to match your style. Just a nice bonus in the looks department. Now, if you're someone who values long-range spot performance, I'd still lean towards the Auxbeam V Ultra. It also comes in around $200 a pair and strikes a great balance as an all-around performer. You'll find links to both lights in the description below. Let me know what's your take on these two lights, and what do you need from your auxiliary lighting setup? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching, have a good one.